It's 11 minutes past 4, and on 99.3 Nigeria Info, I'm Auro Obo, and we are on Countdown 2019.
Haven't you counted down yet?
the last days, the last phase.
Last phase.
Once the National Assembly leadership is elected, hopefully on the 10th of June.
Yes. All right, together with Rotimi Sankore, who's already introduced himself at IOB.
Who butted in?
The inauguration of the president and the vice president with 29 state governors and the deputies on Wednesday, the 29th of May, leaves us with just the inauguration of the 9th National Assembly and 36 state assemblies. That will be all for Countdown 2019. Remember, you can follow the program on Twitter at Countdown 2019, at Rotimi Sankore, at Ideas Radio NG, at Auro Obo, at Nigeria Info FM also. And on the Ideas segment, discussion will be on assets declaration. The day before his inauguration, President Buhari submitted his asset declaration form to the Code of Conduct Bureau, meeting a deadline set for public officers to make their end of tenure declaration. Whether the others have done that, we don't know for that yet. I think the Vice President has also done that too. And we also will have discussions on the content of the oath of office for different political office holders. We're on social media streaming this live on Facebook as well as on Twitter. Remember, you can send your comments to our WhatsApp number, which is 0809 597 580. And when we open the phone lines, we will get the opportunity to interact with our host, IOB and Rotimi Sankore.
Hi, Aro. Nice to have you back.
Thank you very much.
So, Ayo has already hinted that for the idea segment as well as on the main program, we're going to have two very interesting discussions, but the big one is the declaration of assets. Ayo is going to explain to us, we hope very satisfactorily.
You're putting a lot of expectations on
yes,
you.
yes,
it's going to be interesting, it's going to be satisfactory.
Yes,
All I'm going to say is that it is a prerequisite for assumption of public office in Nigeria that you make a declaration of assets, and you do that to the Code of Conduct Bureau. There's a form that you fill. It covers your, not just your own assets, but also assets in the names of your immediate nuclear family, generally. So your wife, your children, or your husband, your children, and sometimes possibly your brothers. You're also in that form often required to say who your close friends are, and so on and so forth. And I think it's important that we bear that in mind when people say that they want to see the actual form that has been, set out. Maybe somebody is a public office holder, and they've said that Jack D and Joan Y are his closest friends, whereas John S and Philip P were thinking that they were the closest friends, and they may not. But actually, to be serious, so you have to swear to that. You have to make that declaration, and it's done on oath of your assets. And if you're in office for more than 4 years, you have to make that declaration every 4 years. In the case of our elected public office holders, it happens that the 4 years coincides with the end of their term in office, so that a president who swore to a declaration of assets in 2015, or a vice president who did so, or a governor, will be due to make a fresh declaration 4 years later. And as I said, the assets declaration is made on oath, and by itself it is merely a declaration. But the purpose of it, the reason why it's of interest to ideas, is that if you as a public officer, when you make your next declaration, have some unexplained wealth, or your family or friends have some unexplained wealth, then you may be asked to account for that, to explain it. And I would also take us a little bit back in history, because one of the things that when President Buhari, in his guise as a military dictator, seized or became the head of state in 1984, one of the reasons why politicians were locked up and some of them were charged to court was the allegation that their declaration of assets forms were not telling the truth. And so that on the basis of that, they were being sentenced. I mean, the government, I think, increased the penalty for false declaration of assets so that some of them were being sentenced to hundreds of years in jail. But so in theory, the president is a big fan of the declaration of assets. However, I need to also say that we need be in no doubt about whether or not people have declared, because they cannot be sworn in if they have not done so. But the big debate in Nigeria has not so much been about whether or not they have made a declaration. It's about do we, the public, know the content of those declarations, so that we are in a position.
Should we know?
So that we are in a position to be able to assist the authorities in confirming whether or not those declarations are valid or invalid. And it has to be said that, as they always say, when the hunter learns to shoot without missing, then the birds learn to fly without perching. So whereas before, a politician entering into office would declare that he has one house and one bicycle, and at the end of his tenure now says that he has 10 houses and 3 Mercedes-Benz cars and 1 private jet. He will now be asked to explain, how did you earn these things? So now what you find is that your politician has learned to declare, even though he only has 1 house and 1 bicycle, to declare that he has 5 houses and 2 Mercedes-Benz cars. And so that by the time...
In other words, some kind of preemptive, anticipatory declaration.
Yes, at least that's the allegation. So that it is actually important that it's not only the Code of Conduct Bureau and whatever investigative powers it has that are now brought to bear on verifying these assets. Because in theory, the Code of Conduct Bureau can conduct a random verification using the assistance of various security agencies. But in practice, it requires members of the public to say, but this man is saying that he only has, that he doesn't own shares and so on and so forth. And then they can say, but this belongs to them. And when they say, no, it belongs to company ABC Limited, then further investigations can be made to say that, company ABC Limited, in theory, belongs to Mr. Lagbaja, but in fact, if you look at the bank accounts, they're all controlled by politician B. And therefore, the connection between politician B and company ABC is probably closer than one might think. So there are all sorts of ways in which, and then the public say, well, he's always going and staying there with his family and so on, and so he must have something to do with that. Why are they allowing him or her to use that place free of charge? So this idea that we members of the public can be part of the army in the war against corruption is one that our political class is staunchly resisting. They don't want us doing that.
Specifically on elected executive office holders. Former President Yar'Adua not only declared but made public his form, or the contents of the form, and it included information on himself, I believe his wife, if I recall correctly.
Well, I have to say that though I know that he was said to have made his declaration public, I actually didn't see the form, so I don't know whether it included all those myriad details. that you are required to fill out on the form.
Okay, but in terms of his houses, his bank accounts,
Yes.
and so forth, all that was public. Now, other presidents, as you've said, are required to fill. It's a prerequisite for being sworn in.
All people who are taking public office.
Yes. Now, for high-profile people like the president, the vice president, Senate president, Speaker of House of Reps, and so forth, is there a case to be made that or governors, ministers, is there a case to be made that it actually has to be made public? Maybe not in every minutest detail, but at least in the broad, so we don't need to know the bank account number, but it may be useful to know
I think
that they have
actually,
6 bank accounts.
I think this is actually the problem, because when people say it should be made public, there's a level of invasion of privacy that even a public officer might not want to be subjected to. Particularly if, so this person is the friend of the, especially in these days of kidnapping. But at the same time, I think that if it's just left to them to pick and choose, then we don't know. And I think that there's a better case to be made for saying that the XYZ parts of the declaration of assets of this person should be made
Like how many houses
public.
they own, where
Well,
the
I mean,
houses.
I don't just mean, because the president and his vice president have done that, as far as we know. That's what they say. But that's because they are the ones picking and choosing what they're going to declare. Whereas, if it were a standard thing that the Code of Conduct Bureau, if somebody were to make a Freedom of Information request, were to be able to go to the Code of Conduct Bureau and say they want to know what the president declared as his income and his assets, there should be a standard list of things that should be given, not at
So
the...
this is how much he had when he became president.
This was his bank balance and so on and so forth. Not at the behest of the person making the declaration, but as a standard thing that anybody who asks for that information will get it.
At least basic indicators of evidence of any corrupt practices.
Well, so that when you now come to the end of the declaration and you find that either they still have the same 130 cows or whatever it is, whereas you saw a whole herd of 5,000 cows on their ranch the other day, then you'll be able to, to raise it and say, but he's not declaring the correct number of cows that he has.
So just talking about cows, so there have been articles
Well, the president has been
and
subjected
speculation,
to much ridicule
yes,
about the failure of his cows to thrive and increase.
So whether it's copy and paste, people have asked legitimate questions as to whether it is copy and paste. So,
but Rotimi, let me say this: that you see, but even that which the president has declared, people have poked fun at it and said it's copy and paste.
Well, it's not funny.
But no. Let me finish. I said people have poked fun at him for not being a good farmer. That his cows, they don't multiply. Are they frozen in aspic or what? But the point is that even with that information that has been made available, has anybody been to the president's farm to count the number of actual cows?
Whether they are still actually just 170.
Because we actually tend to make a lot of fuss about it should be declared, it must be declared. But the hard slog of going into the minutiae and actually verifying, we make more noise about the need for the public declaration as if that is the alpha and omega of it. And in a way, one might even say that some public officers, rather than being dragged kicking and screaming into making public what they have declared, should just declare, because they know that once it's declared, the Nigerian, activists and civil society will go to sleep again and say, okay, they have declared, but they didn't, or it's this or that.
On a serious note, whether people go to the president's farm to check or not, doesn't it appear, if not anything else, awkward that 170 cows at that time are exactly 170 cows now, and I think 25 sheep are still 25 sheep.
Well, maybe he has facilities for 170 cows
And makes
25
sure
sheep.
that he-
And when he gets more, he sells.
Yes.
And
When he
so-
gets to 175,
yeah, it's possible.
It's
So
possible.
I actually think that it's better for us to be in a position to have to say that he actually has more or he has fewer, and he's actually not taking this declaration, which is being made on oath, very seriously.
so that's the issue there. That if he said he had,
We can
20
only speculate about the details of whether what or not what he declared is true or not. We would expect the Code of Conduct Bureau to also ask itself those questions. But as I've said,
this
we
form
have
looks
not
the same as
seen
it
we
did
have
4
not
years
seen the
ago.
Code of Conduct being proactive in this regard, and at the same time as not being
except in some
proactive.
cases.
Well, when they get petitions from individuals about chief justices, they spring into action at the speed of a speeding bullet. But we just wish that they would replicate this kind of investigative acumen in regards to others. I was going to talk to you about the oaths of office in my ideas segment. But I see that I've wittered on too much about the code of conduct. But I would just want to say that the interesting thing about the oaths of office that are taken by our elected officers, that while all members of the executive, even including ministers, commissioners, special advisors and so on, their oath of office all include a specific assertion that they will not allow their personal interest to affect the decisions that they make, whereas the legislators, they don't have to swear that they won't allow their personal interest. And I think that in these days of constituency projects and so on, it's an interesting factor which tells us about something, it's supposed to tell us something about the difference between the executive and the legislature. So, but at the moment, I just need to close off on my ideas segment.
Okay, but we are going to hold on to you a bit more so that after the ads, I mean, this is public.
Yes, but I need
This
to
is a
close
public.
off
Yes, of course we'll close the ideas, but it's a public interest issue,
Right.
and we want to know more about it. The content of the oath for the different, and the
I'll get back
implications,
to you on
please.
that.
So thank you so much for the ideas segment. Remember, folks, you can follow the ideas. Can you help us with the?
Oh, you can follow Ideas at Ideas Radio NG, and you can also check us out on our website, which is ideasradio.ng. And you can look at any of our video casts, or what are they called, on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for ideas, and then you who are listening can see what we actually look like in real life.
Okay. So we'll go for a short ad break.